Expressing your emotions is not a form of weakness, rather a source of strength. In this context, we take the view that emotions are a form of energy created by the body to communicate with you how your overall body status is, and it is advisable that you allow this energy to dissipate. When the body status is calm and relaxed, you will feel energized, happy, and excited. This positive energy will be expressed by tears of joy, eagerness, and a lengthened period of patience. On the other hand, when your body status is feeling threatened and uneasy, you are going to express that energy in the form of fear, anger, and impatience. In this manner, emotional intelligence is about learning to acknowledge your emotions and finding a way to release them rather than blocking them safely. Most individuals wrongly think that negative emotions are unwanted, when, in a real sense, they are part of the human experience, and what is required is to find a safe way to release that energy without harming others. Correspondingly, being highly sensitive is not a form of weakness. On the contrary, it is the society that is becoming numb to empathy and becoming dysfunctional to allowing expression of all emotions. There is nothing wrong with expressing your authentic emotions. It is unfortunate that the society castigates people that express their real emotions and celebrates those that bottle up emotions in a misguided effort to create standardized society. Human behavior is dynamic and it cannot be standardized. But we can build a shared spectrum of what is ideal and what is not. Against this understanding, do not blame yourself as being a mess or easily irked because it is the society that is pushing for suppressing of authentic feelings. However, it is important that you find a safe way to diffuse negative emotions to avoid creating fear and avoidance from people around you. Maintain calmness, even when you have 1,000 reasons not to be. Even though this quote seems to contradict the first quote, it is not. While it is vital to manifest your emotions, both positive and negative, it is important to take time before fully expressing negative emotions. For positive emotions, it might be excusable to act impulsively, but it is still advisable to exercise restraint. Remember that within the context of emotional intelligence, it is critical to consider how others feel. Your excitement could be happening at a time when one of your colleagues has been sacked or going through a divorce. With this understanding, learning to slow down your reaction can help improve your emotional intelligence. Emotions are impulsively, and you will have to learn to anticipate certain emotions to enhance the manner that you react to them. Emotional health affects your self-esteem. It is critical that you learn to diagnose yourself because your emotional state affects your self-esteem levels. By identifying what is troubling you, it will enable you to read more about the trigger and how to handle it before it fully manifests. For emphasis, most individuals tend to overlook the fact that positive emotions can also adversely impact your personality. For instance, if you are easily excited, there are chances that you are likely to overlook minor details of anything and may have difficulties planning for the long term. In other terms, excessively manifesting positive emotions can make you highly vulnerable to environmental factors, as any significant change may make it difficult for you to recover. Equally important is that part of your self-esteem constitutes the self-assurance that you can navigate any situation. For this reason, it is critical that you experience or become aware of both negative and positive emotions. As expected, building the ability to recognize your emotional health and attend to it happens over time with guidance and commitment. Once you master the art of diagnosing and fixing your emotional health, then your levels of self-esteem will increase, as you are likely to navigate any situation. Simply put, negative emotional health will lower your self-esteem levels. One of the ways of diagnosing yourself is through meditation and learning to extricate yourself from your thoughts to develop an independent view of the situation. Life is an active process. Through acknowledging that life is an active process, you are recognizing that human behavior and actions are dynamic. Human behavior is both predictable and uncertain. What differentiates an emotionally stable person from a highly sensitive individual is their emotional intelligence levels. Individuals regarded as emotionally stable exhibit the desired ability to express both negative and positive emotions in an acceptable manner through training or experience. The emphasis is on the degree of reacting to emotions, and that all emotions should be expressed. Locking up emotions is counterproductive, as at one point, you will experience an emotional outburst or get overwhelmed by the emotions and make an irrational and sometimes fatal decision. You should remember that bottling up emotions can be a danger, not only to you, but those around you, including physical systems if you work in critical installations. Since life is an active process, you should accept that learning will not stop. There will be new techniques and suggestions that are new to you, and it will require mentorship and training to master them. All these realizations encourage us to try learning about emotional intelligence, since life is an active process, and there are high chances of improving our emotional intelligence. From the feedback you gather about the way you react to particular situations, you should seek ways to acknowledge and manage the specific reaction. Adjusting your emotional intelligence levels to desirable levels are informed by the fact the human mind and emotional state can be altered. These realizations are the core pillars of advancing emotional intelligence as a concept to be learned, internalized, and operationalized. For example, remember when you used to cry when left alone as a child? But as you grew up, you started cherishing freedom. As a toddler, your mind and exposure had only assured you that you could only be safe around your parents or caregiver. The extrication of the caregiver from your life temporarily generated uncertainty and unfamiliarity. You expressed the negative emotions by crying continuously. However, as you grew, you learned to convert the absence of caregivers in your life temporarily as an opportunity to explore yourself and your environment. The temporary freedom granted you an opportunity to express positive emotions in the form of feeling energized, playful, and confident. What we can learn from this simple illustration is that life is an active process, and we express certain emotions based on our understanding of ourself and the immediate environment. Emotional intelligence can be learned by manipulating the internal and external factors that make us react in a specific manner. Through enlarging the acknowledgement spectrum, your emotional intelligence begins to grow. Through this statement, we learn that loosening up and being open-minded can lessen the need to bottle up emotions, as well as increasing chances of manifesting negative emotions. As indicated earlier, stereotypes and other prejudices predispose you to make premature judgments that compromise empathy in interactions. Furthermore, sustaining prejudices requires significant mental, while denying you numerous opportunities to recognize positive emotions. At an individual level, not being open-minded may use up your physical and mental energy as you try to force a conclusion where it should not suffice. Therefore, learning to allow a large degree of freedom before concluding allows you more options, some of which are likely to lead to a decreased need to manifest negative emotions. Additionally, being open-minded increases empathy quality in conversations. Think of trying to have a conversation with a divorcee as having performed opinion that divorcees entered marriage institution before adequately courting. While having the conversation with the divorcee, your mind will always extrapolate your opinions from the premise that divorcees enter marriage union before adequately knowing each other well. In essence, you are not actively listening to the individual you are talking to because you have allowed the little knowledge you have to become the ultimate knowledge. Some educationists argue that the most overlooked aspect of learning is the ability to unlearn, which most people struggle with. Meditation is not necessarily emotional intelligence, but it can be a critical tool for emotional intelligence. Even though meditation has numerous benefits, it is not necessarily emotional intelligence. The importance of meditation is that it can significantly increase the self-awareness of an individual. As seen earlier, self-awareness is a critical plank of emotional intelligence. Without individual learning to understand itself and its shortcomings, there is little motivation to seek help and commit to the advice and training provided thereafter. In the initial stages of improving an individual's emotional intelligence, meditation is a valuable tool. Meditation can be a form of self-feedback, and it can also be used as a means for an individual to remove himself from the self to form an alternate view of everything. However, if a person is not eased with meditation, the person should not be forced to undertake it. Develop healthy boundaries and enforce them. While a lot has been presented on how to be considerate of others and how to adjust your individual desires to attain balance with others, there is a need for setting boundaries. You can still specify and enforce limits of what you can absorb and what you can manifest. Remember that while adjusting yourself to listen and empathize with others, they also have a moral duty to understand and accept you. Sometimes not all people will easily read your limits, and for this reason, it is important that you explicitly define the limits you can go and the limits that they are allowed to reach when dealing with you. Even though it appears an easy undertaking, most individuals set limits, but lack the spine to enforce such boundaries. Allowing other people to overstep and violate your limits will reverse all gains you have made in developing emotional intelligence. While pursuing the definition of limits allowable, it is important to be considerate and respectful of yourself and others. There is a difference between letting people know the limits allowable and imposing their limits on them. For this reason, effective communication is inherent in emotional intelligence. Remember, negative emotions, such as anger, can be enhanced by failing to let others know of the allowable limits. Fortunately, like any other aspect of emotional intelligence, you can learn how to say no respectfully and firmly. Anger is not a weakness, it is an emotion, but the manner of handling it can be a weakness. Earlier on, we extensively covered why it is important to acknowledge and express all emotions. If you accept that emotions are a form of energy, then you will realize why it is important to express them. Because in this way, you will dissipate the energy and attain equilibrium. We correctly argued that locking up emotions is counterproductive to a point that you will either experience an emotional outburst or you will act irrationally, endangering yourself, others, and the systems around you. Anger is a common negative emotion that many wrongly assume it should be suppressed. In this book, we are arguing that anger should be expressed as an emotion, but it should be expressed when it is building up by various ways of managing anger, such as breathing deeply or counting up to 100 before making a decision when angry. Sometimes spiritualism and culture can enhance or worsen emotional intelligence. There are some religious practices that infuse aspects of meditation that can help an individual attain self-awareness. By understanding yourself, your strengths and weaknesses, you will begin the journey of improving your emotional intelligence levels. For instance, a saying of prayer may allow a person to engage in constructive soliloquy, which enables the individual to express his or her feelings instead of locking them up. On the other hand, some cultural practices may contribute to increasing emotional intelligence. For instance, Western cultures may encourage expressing of emotions, while most African cultures demand that men bottle up emotions. However, it is important to remember that cultural influence is large to the environmental factors that may favor being expressive or reserved. Expectedly, spiritualism and culture can also worsen emotional intelligence levels of a person. For instance, religious practice that qualifies negative feelings as expected norms that one should live with can aggravate poor emotional reaction to challenging situations. Individuals subscribing to such practices may not see the need to seek help, as such emotions are qualified as expected, and one should instead toughen up. There are cultures that frown at the thought of men exhibiting emotions, especially negative emotions, forcing such individuals to feel ashamed of being emotional beings. When you analyze the contribution of your spirituality and cultural influences to your emotional intelligence levels, you will pick what positively contributes to your emotional intelligence and drop others that aggravate inappropriate handling of feelings. Empathy does not imply forgetting self for the sake of others. Even though we have emphasized the value of empathetic listening and developing emotional intelligence levels, it should not imply sacrificing your conversational needs for the sake of accommodating the other person. Empathy should involve active listening and trying to analyze the issue from your viewpoint and the viewpoint of the other person. For this reason, empathy does not imply letting go of your wealth of experience and opinions. It simply requires you to view the issues from two perspectives to enable you to make a fair conclusion. The other role of empathy listening is to make each participant in the conversation comfortable by eliminating a one-sided view of the situation. Avoid excuses as they equate to running away from reality. At one point in life, each one of us may have resorted to excuses because they provided an effective way to avoid protracted conversation that might be difficult. Unfortunately, excuses are merely a cover of underlying issues and do not offer any real solution. It is important that you learn to face your emotions and their impact, rather than justifying why you behaved in the manner you did. Emotional intelligence offers a long-term approach to facing your fears and joys individually and in the public sphere. Excuses work against the spirit of emotional intelligence, as they are technically lies, while emotional intelligence advocates for honesty and consideration of all parties involved in an interaction. Fortunately, emotional intelligence can be cast into a systematic approach to issues. While human behavior is dynamic and unpredictable, emotional intelligence is highly predictable. Emotional intelligence can be seen as a universal template for expressing and managing each emotional reaction. This quality of emotional intelligence makes learning and applying emotional intelligence interesting, as you can develop a custom approach to your emotions that is applicable to nearly all of your situations. As indicated, negative emotions and positive emotions are almost finite, even though how we react varies. The variation to the way each person reacts to emotions varies, but the common reactions are fairly predictable. All these attributes make emotional intelligence highly learnable and applicable by all persons. Like all learning and training, there are levels in emotional intelligence coaching. When you start exploring emotional intelligence to improve your personality and character, remember that you do not have to learn everything in a day, month, or year. Start by analyzing your strengths and shortcomings, and focus first on your weaknesses. It is advisable to learn bit by bit, according to your synthesis and application. With time, you can explore the entire spectrum of emotional intelligence, including the areas that touch on your strengths. By accepting that there are several layers of emotional intelligence, you will focus on what you need and move on to the next when you have the confidence that you have gained much from the current level. Exercise. A. Create your own quote about improving emotional intelligence and support with a simple explanation. B. Create 2-sentence philosophies when it comes to emotional intelligence and explain what they imply in the context of emotional intelligence. C. Locate any quote on this chapter and either agree or disagree with it. Explain why you agree or disagree with it. D. Which stereotypes do you have against a particular ethnicity, gender, or religious faith? How can you overcome these stereotypes